I want to talk about something serious today, which is I'm actually a little bit worried. Like, I don't put much stock in this, but maybe like 5% of my brain, and I hate to be Tim Paul, is genuinely worried about a civil war in the United States as a
Oh
result
yeah.
of the
Oh, it's
2024.
not my base case, but you definitely have to assign a non-zero probability to it.
I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
Okay. And the thing that brought me to this conclusion is the following, which, if we get this up, you can see here, this is just one of those websites that shows you the prediction of the next presidential election. And they have here, based on the current polling, Donald Trump already has a win. And the states that are up for toss aren't relevant. They'd be nice to have, but they don't actually matter.
So they think he's locked up 277 electoral votes before
If you
you
go,
even get into the contentious ones.
so if you take the polling by state and then plot it in, which is why I presume this website is done here, because I've tried to do it myself as well, and I came to a similar conclusion. Trump's already won. If the election was done tomorrow, he'd win easily. That's obviously not going to happen because you've got a year of campaigning and all sorts of shenanigans will go on.
And
Blah, blah,
Biden
blah,
might
blah.
be replaced.
But if you're not Trump, let's say you're the other guy, and you're looking at that, you would probably shit yourself. Rightfully
Yep.
so, because you would think, Jesus Christ, I've painted him as everything, including Hitler, and this is the result. People want him back, and that should be, in a normal situation, okay, that didn't work, your presidency, that was a waste of time. In fact, it really, really didn't work and has gone terribly. But of course, that can't be the response. Instead, the response has been, let's just kick him off the ballot, which, amazing tactic, if nothing else, in the sense of, are you serious? And this is in Colorado, to begin with, of course, in which the state of Colorado, their Supreme Court decided that they could just kick Donald Trump off the ballot and then cite the 14th Amendment saying he caused an insurrection, which is basically what that was written for, right? Not an actual civil war, but no, instead.
And
Well, some have been suggesting for a long time that that's why they've been going so hard on the insurrection rhetoric, so that they could fit it into the 14th Amendment.
But
And
the
now it's
only,
come
the
true.
only evidence of insurrection they've got is MSNBC coverage.
Yeah, this is the disconnect between reality and then the attempts, of course, because if anyone, we'll get back to it in a minute, but the obvious video evidence exists of what Donald Trump did that day, and it's him giving a speech, then some people breaking to the Capitol whilst he's still speaking, and then they go off and start doing that. He stops speaking, and then puts out a series of tweets and videos telling them to be peaceful and to leave the Capitol. Then Twitter deletes his account, so you can't see him doing that. And then for the next several months, wall-to-wall coverage of how he'd caught an insurrection. And then the ultimate goal, which people speculated, came true, which is that several states are like, well, because we've said it enough, we'll now just lie to ourselves in court and say that he should be off the ballot so he physically can't come back, because obviously people actually quite like him and would vote for him. Okay.
Works every time.
That isn't small. I think that's really scary, and we should take it somewhat seriously. Because, of course, that's Colorado to begin there. And they say in here that the case has obviously now gone to the Supreme Court of the United States, but that won't be heard until the 8th of February. That's as the Republican presidential primary will already be underway. Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada will have already voted. Now, almost certainly Trump is going to win the primary. He's going to be the candidate, I think.
It would be
Foregone.
stupid to do anything else.
It would be statistically really, really unlikely given the polling. So, okay, if that went the other way, it's unlikely to. You would presume. The Supreme Court, everyone presumes, is just going to bat this down. But that's a presumption. And of course, this then went on to Maine. Maine decided they'd kick him off the ballot as well. I mean, this one was very funny, to say the least, because the lady, the Secretary of State for the state there, she came out and said, democracy is sacred. That was her first line. I am mindful that no Secretary of State has ever deprived a presidential candidate of ballot access based on the section of the 14th Amendment. I am also mindful, however, that no presidential candidate has ever before engaged in insurrection. So she said, democracy is so important, that's why I'm doing this. Trust me, he did engage in insurrection. But as you rightly point out, there is no one's convinced by that. All of the polling on the January 6th committee shows that the public don't care. They knew it was just political pandering to yourselves, not to the public, to yourselves.
And once again, it really doesn't. You can't emphasize enough that throughout 2020, after George Floyd's death, the Democrats actively mobilized their own client groups to cause chaos across cities in America that killed multiple people and cause billions in property damage. And they completely ignore that. They completely ignore that Democrats have been promoting things like the Innocence Project forever, which is explicitly a scheme to get guilty minorities out of prison.
Well, in those circumstances as well, we're looking at what is the politician's response exactly. And the exact response was either they deserve it, abolish the police, or we need to rise up. No point was there, please go home, be peaceful, blah, blah, blah. Politicians didn't tweet that from Democratic
Was it
accounts.
what's the one? Portland, Oregon. Is that the place
That's
where
the place where I went off the deep end.
the mayor completely was on the side of Antifa the entire time
Whilst they were firebombing officers.
Yeah, and then they came to his house and said, "This isn't good enough," and tried to attack his house. And at that point, all of a sudden, you can, okay, maybe the police are needed here.
It's, I mean, there's a reason the Homeland Security guys had to go there. And in California, the interesting conversation is that there, the debate is about why haven't we kicked Donald Trump off the ballot? Again, 3 states where he probably shouldn't win, even in a free and fair election. But it's interesting to see.
Part of me still wonders if Donald Trump won California last time round.
I doubt it. I really do. But
The
we'll
thing
get to that in a minute. I've got
Right,
a
okay.
good case.
Yeah.
But the conversation here is about why haven't we? And the quote from this Secretary of State for California says, "If I believe in this democracy that is here, I have to basically continue to abide by the rule of law. And for me not to do that, I would be no better than Donald Trump." So even California is like, well, that's mad. That's obviously an insane thing to do. But they didn't stop Colorado and Maine from doing it. And this brings us back to
I like the
Well, what-
idea that in California they opened up the dictionary definition for democracy and went, guys, you're never going to believe this.
turns out
I don't think we can kick Trump off.
Yeah. And this brings me back to something really gross here, because, of course, I just said Donald Trump probably won't win these states anyway if they kick him off and then the election goes ahead like that. But that's really not good enough, is it? Because you've still got millions of people in those states who have now massively been disenfranchised purely because the American system is now going this way needlessly. And so I wanted to look at some data real quick. And I'll start off with this, which is a graph I made last time of postal votes, so mail-in voting per presidential election. So you can see here it was on a general upward trend from 96, where it was 7.6% of the public sent in a postal vote. Didn't really matter all that much. And then 2016, it was about 20%. Not a general trend, I think, that is healthy. But then in 2020, it jumped to 42% of all votes cast were mail-in postal votes, which is unusual. So,
Yeah.
for some reason, I'm not going to use the 2020 election. I'm going to jump to the 2016 results to look at these individual states. Don't ask me why. But as you can see here, you have California. I mean, 4 million people, 31% of the electorate in California voted not for Hillary Clinton, but for Donald Trump there. And okay, he's not going to win that. The swing's not there. But that doesn't really matter. I mean, you've still got 4 million people completely disenfranchised. And that's just California. Then you get on to Colorado, and as you can see, it tightens quite a lot. There's a 5% difference between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump.
But first of all, I don't believe the California number, because I think that the last election was not the first time where the Democrats have lent on the scale, have fortified. But yeah,
I'm just trying to pick a Donald Trump election in which
I think
was less postal.
everything that you consider even vaguely purple is actually red if you count it properly.
So you can take that perspective.
Well, scroll down so we can see the county map there.
Yeah.
As well. And you can see that there is a very clear divide. I would imagine that those big blue areas are mostly urban counties.
But that's the same in every country.
Yeah.
Which is the real divide between the right and the left is the urban versus rural mindset. And then the in-between is where the battle is. But you can see that if we take these numbers as red, there's a very small margin there for actual victory. And then again, you've got another million people who are disenfranchised if this went ahead. And then you get to Maine, which surprised me. Very small margin of 3%, as you can see there.
Oh, really?
47 to 44. Which, I mean, Maine on every presidential map I ever see is always blue. It's always deep blue. Like, they are going to win this one. But another 300,000 people who would be disenfranchised there. Which is mental. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's just is not normal circumstances.
Yeah.
And what's the response? Because largely the response has been a further swing for Donald Trump by the public. But if you're the elite who did this, and you think you're just going to get away with it, I mean, I don't know what their plan is, but currently they're just playing the victim, which, who's that convincing? So this is the lady in Maine who is like, I have death threats now. This is a fear tactic from Donald Trump's campaign.
I think that their plan is that they know that they have a weaponized legal system that they can deploy against people if needs be. If you're posting the wrong thing on social media, sorry, buddy, we've classified that as terroristic hate speech now. So you're going to get a knock on your door. And if that doesn't work, and if they can't get people on that, they know that they do still have large populations that they can deploy to cause chaos if they get the right
and also
circumstances
bear
for
in
it.
mind that during the pandemic they basically purged the military of Trump supporters with the vaccine with a mandate of some sort that came along a couple of years ago that was effectively used to purge free thinking right wingers from the military.
A lot of people keep posting. It's hard to tell. Please let us know. But a lot of people keep posting. I see it. Military emails or recruitment in which they're talking about now you don't need that certain something. It's like, okay, that's weird.
Yeah,
All of a
because
sudden,
we might actually want to go to war with China now, so we need all the white boys to sign up again.
this article here though, where she's saying she has faced death threats since determining that Donald Trump was disqualified from being able to run for presidential election, and she said it was an effort to scare her and others. Now, cut me wrong, but I don't think the United States is about being spooky anymore. I don't think they're trying to scare her. It's not that level. I think genuinely they're at the angry level.
Yeah.
Like genuinely, you have taken away 300,000 people's votes in your own state. How do you think they feel about that? I mean, what was the rallying cry of the American Revolution?
Give
No
me liberty or-
taxation without representation.
Yeah.
I literally can't vote for my representative of my choice.
Well, I mean, we know how this works in countries that aren't democracies. Basically, they just have a civil war every now and again.
Yeah, and that's sort of the big worry because
Yes.
global superpower kind of in charge of the entire West.
Yes.
Uh,
And what they are doing is they are dismantling democracy in the name of democracy, and you're just going to get what you get in all other countries that don't have votes. You have civil wars.
And the evidence here is clear as well. I mean, Josh documented it here, in which is a breakdown of the timeline. And of course, you can go and check it out in your own time. I mean, what did Donald Trump do during all this? Well, you could see his tweets in which he's literally saying, be peaceful. And then you can also just go back to his account now that Elon's taken over as a historical document that now exists again. Weird how they didn't want it to exist, because when you go and have a look at what was tweeted during that time, it's telling everyone to go home. This video is just him speaking for 2 minutes, 40 seconds saying, go home, be peaceful. And he just goes on, support the women in blue. We support law and order. Thank you. I'm sorry, but this is,
And that's why they banned his account.
stay peaceful. And then it's his live stream where he's still talking. So literally after he finishes his talk, he's telling everyone, stop, support the police, be peaceful. There is no case to be made that he engaged in insurrection. It just isn't there. You have some people that broke the law, okay? But he's not involved in this, nor did he advocate it. So presumably when it goes to the Supreme Court, it will be shot down. And even if that happens, because it's not guaranteed, that's an assumption we're making, what's the response? Because they were willing to do this, and I presume they're willing to then extend that to as many states as possible so that they can push it through. I mean, they seem to be willing to do literally anything.
They've played their hand and they've shown what playbook that they're working from here, which is the screw you playbook.
Yeah.
And if like you say, if these large populations in these states see that the game that's being played is the screw you game,
I'm being taxed, but I can't have any representation.
So,
I mean-
so one interpretation of this is that I think it's the case, but I'll just mainstream it a bit. But they genuinely did cross the Rubicon at the last election, and now they cannot go back because a lot of people know that they're going to be in jail for a very long time for election fortification.
And
If
they
this-
have to
if
win
this
the
man
next
goes-
one. By
Yes,
any
it's
means
not
necessary.
the crime has already been committed. It is no longer an option to lose.
and whenever it's kind of a meme now, but when they talk about our democracy, what that literally means is me ruling you, specifically me being in a position in government ruling you. That's what it means. And like you say, that a lot of these people are in positions that are completely untouchable by the electorate. The only people that might be able to touch them are people at the executive level going in and saying, right, we're going to purge all of these jobs from the federal government. or he puts people in positions in the federal government who are going to be able to do that for him.
Aaron McIntyre has a good series of tweets called "What does democracy mean in this sentence?" where he shows up loads of
That's
articles
one of
like
my
this.
favorites.
Yeah, and it's I think the last one was something like 40% of Western democracies are voting next year. This is a threat to our democracy. But he's got a whole bunch of them where basically the idea of democracy obviously means rule by the elites.
It's funny because it's not even just in America that this happens. This is why Germany was also saying, I don't know, the AfD is getting pretty popular.
Yep.
We might have to purge them off the ballot as well.
Yep.
With the United States, though, and to get back to my Tim Paulism, he's made a series of
I should have brought my beanie on for you.
yeah, he's made a series of points where it's like, if this happens, then are we not in some kind of low-level civil war? And usually his stuff is along the line of breakdown in law and order, right? But there is a solution to that, and it's not one that Americans are unusual to, which is if there's a low level of law and order, you have the Second Amendment, you protect your own family. And this happens periodically when something happens in LA, for example, and roof Koreans become a thing. And that's a solution that's built in. But this, where we're looking at not having a representative, I don't think the American system has a fail-safe for that. And the written solution to that is to overthrow the government. That is what the Founding Fathers wrote you should do. So if I'm looking at those 300,000 people in Maine or the several million in Colorado or California and such, I mean, I'm not saying do it, okay? Not advocating violence. I'm saying that the American Constitution as written by the Founding Fathers is instructing their ancestors to do that if it ever happened in the United States. And I wouldn't be very shocked if quite a few members of the American Republic took that up.
Well, that
is the thing they pledge allegiance to and obsess over.
That's why the US elites are desperately, desperately pushing Nikki Haley. Because if they can get Nikki Haley over the line, they can have a Republican president. She won't do anything about, the last fortification. She won't do anything about the Jan 6 political prisoners. She's just part of the machine. She'll give Raytheon another war. They're desperate to get somebody like her, but they're not going to get it because if it's not Trump, it's going to be someone like Ramaswamy or something.
Yeah, again, I mean, please discuss. Let me know what your thoughts are. But there we are. I'll end this off with one more thing though, which is as you alluded to correctly. I mean, if you actually wanted to build a case for someone engaging in insurrection, I don't know enough about Joe Biden's statements during the George Floyd riots, but the best candidate I could think of is Kamala Harris. Would actually be ineligible because as you can see here, this is one that obviously went viral at the time. It's one amongst several, in which she tweets out, if you're able to chip in now to the Minnesota Freedom Fund to help post a bail for those protesting on the ground in Minnesota. Now,
protesting meaning burning and looting.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're talking about violent criminals. I mean, the response at the time, rather correctly, was you're funding domestic terrorism, whatever that is, that's been listed as sensitive content and so forth, in which people are like, no, we're talking about actual violent criminals burning the place down for your political agenda, and you want to bail them out.
And you are right that it's not even really comparable to Donald Trump because all we have of Donald Trump is him saying, don't do this, go home.
Yeah.
With her, we have explicit...
I endorse bailing these people out of prison.
Explicit statements saying, yeah, please get these criminals back on the streets.
And an example in which, well, this did result in one death we can tangibly point to. It's just a single individual because we can point directly to her donations and then the individual who was released in regards to that time period who then went on to murder someone. This is an urban man, as you can see there. And he, as you I can read from the headline and then the details, he was in prison for rioting. And so after Kamala Harris's tweet, the Minnesota Freedom Fund bailed him out so he could be free. And they've acknowledged it helped secure the release of Sean Michael Tillman, who then in May shot and killed a passenger on a rail platform in St. Paul. Because when I'm waiting for a train, I need to kill people. Quote, it is neither just nor effective to respond to violence by denying bail and preemptively pushing people who are disproportionately poor, black, brown, and indigenous into the prison system, said the Minnesota Freedom Fund. What's that got to do with the price of eggs? I mean, it means nothing. Like, we're talking about violent criminals here. Because the dude had a criminal history as well. It wasn't just he was so outraged about George Floyd and deeply cared about fentanyl rights or something.
Yeah.
Here's his list. The criminal record includes multiple counts of indecent exposure, including indecent exposure to a minor, as well as assault and unlawful possession of a firearm. And then they bailed him out for rioting.
Thanks,
And then he went
Kamala.
and killed someone.
But nevertheless, the Democrats look at that individual and think, one of ours.
Yeah. At least you can draw.
Literally, that's what it is. They go, oh, okay, he's useful to us.
So, I mean, that's a case in which a politician did actually help fund the riots which were destroying the United States and did result at least in one tangible murder we can point to directly. As to indirectly, God knows. Whereas Donald Trump said, don't do it. I'm sorry. That's just the evidence there is.
Watch out, though. Trouble in paradise. Black women, the block of black women, 7% Florida, threatens to boycott Biden.
Maybe some good news. But there we are. I'm a bit worried. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Brokenomics series, this episode on the economy of Rome. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.